Good morning, class. Good to have you here. I hope you have been enjoying Bible online once again this year. By the way, just so you know, I have been exposed to COVID. I don't sick. No, I really don't. Uh, I on Wednesday. I will be zooming with you. You'll be in class, and I'll be on the screen. So class and at least somewhat interactive when we do that. So hopefully I'll be back by Friday. Anyway, so we're continuing on in the Gospel of Mark, and we're going to be looking specifically at his travels as presented in the Gospel of Mark. So hang on with me, and we'll go there. Sorry about that. Anyway, so we have our map here. Sorry, I have my face in the way. I'm trying to not block Caesarea Philippi, which my pointer is pointing at right now. So you want to have an idea that that's where it is. And there will be homework again at the end of this. It will be due Wednesday, even though I won't be there with you in class. So as Jesus travels in Mark, as you remember in Matthew, he had basically two locations. He had Galilee and he had Jerusalem, and he had those two places. Mark follows the pattern in that Jesus doesn't go to Jerusalem till the end of the ministry, but he travels all over the place early on in his ministry. Okay, so we start out with his baptism and temptation in the wilderness. And so if you see the big one there, let me go backwards. It's not there. Forwards, it's there. So the one is down by Jericho in the region called Perea. Mark doesn't tell us that he was baptized at that part of the Jordan River. He just simply says he was baptized and then he spent some time in the wilderness. And so let me read that little passage, Mark 9:1, 9 through 13. At that time, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee. So if you notice, Nazareth is up here down to this area to get baptized. That's quite a good walk. I don't have a scale on here, but that's something like 70 miles walking that he did there. You're going to get used to Jesus walking a lot. To be baptized by John in the Jordan. Just as Jesus was coming up out of the water, he saw heaven being torn open, and the Spirit descended on him like a dove. And the voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." At once the Spirit sent him out into the wilderness, and he was in the wilderness 40 days, being tempted by Satan. He was with the wild animals, and angels attended him. So we have this wild animals, the wilderness thing. And for you and me, chances are wilderness means woods, mountains, woods, things like that. Not what it meant for them. Probably you'd have a different idea of wilderness if you went to someone who lived near a desert. It would be closer to what they have. Wilderness was the area around Jericho. It wasn't especially woodsy, it wasn't mountainous, but it was rough and it was uninhabited, and it was called the wilderness. So he stayed probably in this area for the 40 days and 40 nights. Maybe he came out farther this way, more into the barren areas. But so he starts out his ministry down here. We get this area not from the Gospel of Mark, this lower part of the Jordan, because as you recognize, the Jordan runs that whole length. But Luke in particular calls it a place called Bethabara, and he places it down here, and so just follow with that. Okay, from there we find his calling of his first disciples is up in Capernaum, up on the Sea of Galilee. It's up here in the northwest corner of the Sea of Galilee, and he is calling his first disciples. And so we find evidence of this. We're still in chapter 1, John 1 or Mark 1:14. After John was in prison, Jesus went into Galilee proclaiming the good news. That's verse 14. In verse 16, as Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon, his brother, and Andrew casting a net into the lake. And so these things are all going along on the Sea of Galilee, and he calls his first disciples there. We move on down to verse 38. Well, that's where Jesus is there. He preaches in the synagogue. This is where the four men carry their friend to get healed, those kind of things. And actually, that doesn't happen until later. But these things happen there along the Sea of Galilee early in his ministry. We go on 3, and people are coming to him. And so I have several different passages here. Let's see, 1 verse 39. It says, so he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues, driving out demons. So we find he's just wandering around Galilee and He's teaching in different places, and people are coming to him. 139, 2:1. After a few days, when Jesus entered Capernaum, we find he comes back to Capernaum. The people heard that he had come. They gathered in such large numbers. Chapter 2, verse 13. Once again, Jesus went out beside the lake. A large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. And so we find Jesus is traveling all around. And as he travels all around, people are coming to where he is. They're coming to him. He's in the Galilee area, but that's what's going on. We move along. We come to the region of the Gerasenes. And you notice I didn't have a 3 because the 3 would have to cover that whole area. But 4, we come to the region of the Gerasenes. Other Gospels call it the Gadarenes. And this is over here in this region of the Decapolis. It's not a Jewish region. It's a region inhabited by people who are not Jewish. There's probably a good mix of Jews in there because it's close. The people are going to live there. It's kind of like living near the Canadian border or near the Mexican border. You're going to have a lot of overlap there. You're going to have influences going both ways. But this is not a specifically Jewish region. And so we find these Gadarenes in chapter 5, verse 1 on the Gospel of Mark. Chapter 5, verse 1 tells us they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. And of course, this is the one with the guy named Legion that we have talked about before. And so he's traveling around. He's moving around. We see him down near Jericho at the beginning. He comes up to the Sea of Galilee. He's traveling around the region of the Sea of Galilee. He doesn't stay there, though. He goes up to Tyre. And if you look at the top left of the map, we have the region of Tyre there. Tyre and Sidon. Sidon is down south of there. This is Phoenicia. This is the area back in the Old Testament where Jezebel came from, who came down and was such a bad influence on Ahab and the Israelites at that time. This is where the woman wants to comes to him and begs that he'll heal her daughter. He says, you know, the Son of Man has come to the Jews. She says, yeah, but even the dogs under the table get to lick the crumbs. He says, so be it as your faith is done. And so he goes up to this region of Tyre, and he has this experience with her, 7:24 to 31. And he has kind of a good response to her. Jesus left that place and went to the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it, yet he could not keep his presence secret. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an impure spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter. Just let the children eat all they want, he told her, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Lord, she replied, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Then he told her, for such a reply, you may go. The demon has left her daughter. She went home, found her child lying on the bed, and the demon had gone. Then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went through Sidon down to the Sea of Galilee into the region of the Decapolis. It's kind of interesting because he goes up here apparently to get some alone time. He gets mobbed there, so he comes down here, goes across Galilee into the Decapolis. He doesn't stay here. He's on his way. He just goes through Galilee. It's kind of like, almost seems like he's frustrated or tired dealing with his own people. We're going to see the passage where a prophet is without honor in his own hometown, and he goes into the Decapolis back so we're back over there again. He was there in section 4 in the region of the Gerasenes. Now the Decapolis implies a larger area, and you see it goes on both sides of the Jordan. Mostly it's thought to be on the east side of the Jordan, but some of it lops over into the west side of the Jordan River. And so we find he's back in the region of the Decapolis. Chapter 7, verse 31. Then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre, I just read that, went through the Sidon, down to the Sea of Galilee, into the region of the Decapolis. There some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged Jesus to place his hands on him. After he took him aside, away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers in the man's ears and goes on. And so we find, once again, Jesus goes places. He doesn't go, he goes places almost like he's trying to avoid people, but people find him where he goes, and he gets no peace. Jesus is always traveling from one place to another. And he just keeps circling around the region of Galilee. I mean, he stays in the Galilee area, but you'll find him, he's at Capernaum. He's gone from Capernaum. He goes to Nazareth. He has all his different experiences. I skipped by chapter 6, verse 4. I'd like to back up there a little bit because we find something about why he's traveling so much about these times. Chapter 6, Jesus left there and went to his hometown accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. Where did this man get these things? They asked. What's his wisdom that has been given him? What are these remarkable miracles he is performing? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us? And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives, and in his own home. He could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. So we find the frustration he has in his own area where he's not accepted because they know him. They say, this is just Jesus, no big deal. But as he travels around, people come to him everywhere he goes. It's just he can't go home. The people won't accept him there. So he keeps circling around the area around Galilee, and he's doing miracles and he's doing great wonders. He finally heads to Jerusalem by way of Jericho. By the way, I skipped by Caesarea Philippi. I mentioned that he went to Caesarea Philippi. That's where Peter made his great confession. It's in the Gospel of Mark as well as in the others. I don't have the reference listed, so I'm not going to hunt it down right now. But Peter makes that great confession. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Here we go. Mark chapter 8, verses 27, 30. Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked them, who do people say I am? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, still others, one of the prophets. But what about you, he asked, who do you say I am? Peter answered, you are the Messiah. Jesus warned them not to tell anyone. And that is just shortly before they start heading. He starts traveling, and we see them name places. And they name Caesarea Philippi first. Then they come down and they name a high mountain. Well, they don't name it. They just say a high mountain, which something might be Mount Horeb. And not Mount Horeb, Mount... I'm drawing a blank right now. Over here, where Syria is. Hermon, Mount Hermon, or Hermon, if you want to call it that, but it's Mount Hermon. So he takes them to the high mountain. They come down, they go next to, back to the area around Galilee. I just read through all this stuff, and now I'm drawing blanks on where the different passages are. Verse 30 of chapter 9, they left that place and passed through Galilee. Verse 33 of chapter 9, they came to Capernaum. Chapter 10, verse 1, then they left that place and went into the region of Judah and crossed the Jordan. And you get this idea that he came down this way, he comes home, he goes across the Jordan. He's working his way down towards Jerusalem. He doesn't actually talk about it yet until we get to chapter 10, verse 32. Then they were on their way up to Jerusalem, Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished, those who followed them. And by the way, Jesus has been predicting his death now. Chapter 11, verse 1, as they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage and Bethany about the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two of his disciples, and we have he's actually entering Jerusalem at this point, which is what we call Palm Sunday. And once again, just like Matthew, he does his ministry up here. He comes down here to be crucified. He comes down here to be sacrificed. And so we have the traveling of Mark is much more significant than the traveling in Matthew. Matthew basically has two places of ministry, Galilee and Jerusalem. Mark has him traveling all over the place, spending a lot of time in places of the Gentiles. Okay, so with all that in mind, I want you to look at your homework. You do have an assignment. First of all, you need to look up and define the word itinerant. What is an itinerant and what does an itinerant do? And then I want you to write a paragraph or two, at least 50 words, comparing Jesus' itinerant ministry with his home ministry. And you have to consider what home is. Is it Nazareth? Is it Capernaum? Is it Galilee? So define what home ministry is for him. Compare that to his itinerant ministry and see if you can come to any conclusions about Jesus and what's valuable to him. In any conclusion, you might want to put ideas into your mind. Any conclusion at all, you can come from that. Okay, short one today. Hope it's helpful. If nothing else, maybe you have a little idea of the map of Israel a little bit better. I will see you online through Zoom on Wednesday. God bless. Take care.